Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Woo! Today on episode 200, I was very lucky, privileged to have Taylor Roark on the podcast. He is a facilitator of creative purpose, initiative coach, as well as guiding authentic leadership, excuse me. Got to say, had a rather wonderful conversation with him, how he got started with it all. Let's just say, he became a blacksmith by moving a dragon, and from there, 125 letters later, getting an interview, becoming a lawyer, and then, becoming the coach he is today. It is a fascinating story, and a very good conversation. So please sit back, enjoy, and don't forget, subscribe to the podcast. So we can grow and get better. Have a good one, my friends, my life warriors, and be cool, be happy, be awesome. Peace. Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Woo! Today on episode 200, I have Taylor Roark on this episode today. He is a facilitator of creative purpose, initiative coach, guide authenticity, leadership, and men's work. Ooh, yes, many a title there, sir. And I haven't even gone into the realm of your podcast yourself, but we'll get there. But how are you today, Taylor?
I'm very well, thank you, Muyiwa. Fantastic. Thank you for having me on. It feels a great pleasure. Milestone 200. Yes. I'm certainly that many days, months, but not years yet in life.
Yes. Now, I have to ask, like with all things, when we start these things off, now, a facilitator of creative purpose.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, I believe that we all have creative purpose here on this planet. And some of us need that unlocked. Some of us need a little bit of insight or, the spark of ignition under us. So I facilitate that. We all have it. I'm not giving anybody purpose, but I facilitate that. To facilitate means to make something easy. So I facilitate people's creative purpose.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things in this world today that people sometimes miss out on. If it's not purpose, they have basically they don't have vision. It might sound very corporate-y, but vision and purpose, when you've got those two things going for you, you're really rocking. But when most of the times, I think a lot of people either miss out on one or the other. So coming up with creative purpose or helping people find that purpose, it can't be easy, I would imagine.
Well, it's as easy as you decide it is. So I worked on myself first and had mentors and had help for myself. And it's creative because you create your purpose. I don't believe that you sort of find your purpose. We have this misnomer and this idea that we go out and find our purpose as if it's like lost change that's underneath the sofa cushion or something. But we create our purpose, our lives, we were saying before we got started, right? We're not scripting this, we're making this up. So we're making up our lives every single day. So you have an opportunity to create what your life is about, and you have an opportunity to create what your purpose is about. And as I say, my assumption and my belief is that we all have creative purpose. So as you rightly say, many of us, we don't have structures, we don't have things in society that support us to make us believe that we have creative purposes. That's for these Instagram influencers, that's for these Hollywood actors or whomever, but that's not me, right? I just go to my desk and sit here and do this. But actually, I believe we all have creative purpose.
Yes, and when you say you've worked on yourself, I've got to say, if you how can I say, you have had your you've put many rods in many fires over the course of time, from basically like from what I read on your bio, being a blacksmith to like, yeah, in the realm of corporate world. So like what, excuse me, tongue-tied, need to change these teeth. Excuse that. Yeah. So yeah, with that kind of journey, like, okay, blacksmith, did you start at being a blacksmith, then transition to the corporate world? Or were you like in the corporate world and transition to being a blacksmith?
No, so it was the former. I mean, you talk about many rods in the fire, and blacksmithing is literally that. You put a rod of steel into the coal fire, take it out, and beat it and forge it into the forms that you want. I fell into, well, like most things in life, I fell into blacksmithing. I really didn't know what I wanted to do, where I wanted to be. I had a notion that I wanted to be a filmmaker. I studied film at university, but I don't think I was a very good filmmaker. Anyway, I was interested in it. And when I graduated from university after a couple of years, I went to live with my father, who I actually had not had a relationship with, really. I mean, I had a passing relationship with, but my parents got divorced very, very, very young. So I went to live with him in my early 20s. And I was living with him, and he was doing some theater. He was involved. He was his own. I mean, maybe a chip off or the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because he was quite an eclectic man as well. And he was involved in the film industry, such as it was in North Carolina in the 80s, 90s, really. And he knew somebody that was a local artist. And I met this man, Joel Haas, and we got to talking, and we got on well. And he said, I was in my 20s, and he said, "You look like a strong man. How'd you like to earn $20?" And I was like, "Well, what do I need to do?" And he said, "I need to move an 18-foot dragon from my shop to a local garden." And I said, "I don't understand what you're talking about." What?
That sounds like.
And he said, "Well, come by my house tomorrow at 4:00, and we just it'll take 20 minutes, and I'll pay you $20." And I said, "Cool." So I went by, and and sure enough, there was a dragon that was fabricated out of metal that was in 3 different sections. So the sort of the head, the tail, and the body. And we lifted it up onto the back of his pickup truck, and then drove it about 3 blocks away to a home with a garden, where we installed this 18-foot dragon. And I said, "Okay, well, that was cool." And he paid me $20. And I said, "Well, that was great. Sorry, what did we just do? And what do you do? What is this?" And he said, "Well, I'm a metal sculptor." And I said, "This is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. How do I do this?" And he said, "Well, come by tomorrow afternoon, and I'll teach you how to weld." So I started going by his house, and sure enough, he was teaching me how to weld. He was teaching me metalsmithing, and I started working with him, and I became his apprentice and worked with him for about a year or so. And then he introduced me to a local blacksmith who was a regionally and actually nationally and internationally known blacksmith, Enrique Vega. And I worked with him for a year and a half, apprenticing with him as a blacksmith.
Good God! Like from one random task, just moving a dragon, to a year apprenticing and learning how to weld and do metalwork. And you just was like, "I'm gonna go with this." Are you kind of a person which just sort of rolls with a particular flow at a particular time, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I like variety. So I find things and I get involved with them, and maybe at some point I get a little bored with them and I move on to something else. So similarly, I kind of fell into being a Wall Street lawyer. So I was at law school.
Yeah.
Which was its own sort of story. I mean, I got to a point actually with the metalsmith that I was kind of encouraged to go off on my own. I didn't really feel like I had the confidence at the time, to start my own business, and I retreated to what I assumed was an easier task because I was more capable intellectually or whatever, and so I
Yeah.
decided to go to law school. I don't know if that's easier or not, but it felt easier to me than becoming an artist. So I went to law school, and then after my first year, law school in the U.S. is 3 years, postgraduate, post-university, and my best friend, the first year in law school, was working as an intern in New York City, and I went down to see him one weekend. I had zero intention of getting a corporate law job. I thought I was going to do something very, very different. I thought I was going to do like civil rights legal work.
Yeah.
And I went to New York City, and I had one of the most amazing weekends of my life with this friend of mine. You know, it's just like all of a sudden this city like opened up for, I grew up in suburbia. And so, you know, it'd be like somebody, I don't know, growing up like in wherever, like suburban Devon or something, and they come to London for the first time, and here somebody shows them an amazing time, opens up the whole world to them. And I just said to my friend, I said, this is amazing. How do I live here? And he said, well, you just do this, and this. You work really hard. You fill in this, you apply here, and there you go. So that's what I did. I went back to where I was living in Maine, and I filled out, I sent in 125 specifically designed cover letters with my resume to law firms in New York City.
Thank God. Like, because like this is the thing, New York City compared to Maine. Yeah, it's a wild time. What year was this? Because like I can now sort of gauge how wild the time it would have been.
Yeah, so I mean, I worked there in the summer of 1999. So I would have applied for the position in is that right, or 98? Anyway, it was mid to late 90s, 96, 97. I probably applied and then worked there maybe the summer of 98. Yeah, so it was still. I will say, you know, I mean, I'm fortunate. I didn't go to a Harvard, Yale, Columbia, these kind of, you know, prestigious law schools. I didn't have that pedigree. I went to a very regional, small, podunk, we would call it, law school. Podunk, yeah, law school, backwoods, right, in a sense. And but it was the .com boom, and so there were people. Law firms were hiring, we'll take people from this place and that place. And I just slotted into that, sort of, realm and world, and got a job from it. And actually I got a job because I'd been a blacksmith, because I put it on my CV. And when I went to the interview, people were like, well, this is interesting. Why is this here, and what does this mean? And so I had a whole story about how being a blacksmith related to being a lawyer, and I was in control of the conversation, because, you know, most conversations, you know, you go to a law firm and you want to make people look how cool you are, and I interned and I, you know, made copies for this state senator, and people are like, great, that's really, really impressive.
The sort of standard sales pitch everyone does in that interview. Like, yeah, I can imagine.
So I didn't have that. I had my own thing, and I didn't know how good it was until I showed up, and people were like, I mean, I actually only had 2 interviews in New York. Out of the 125 applications, I had 3 interviews. Yeah.
Right. No, but
that's all you need.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, but this is the thing. That's what you got to do, though, because like many people think, yeah, you applied to 1 or 2 places, and there you go, the job comes into play. But like applying for 125 places, just getting 3 responses, and out of those 3, you got in. Like, yeah, because of, how can I say, like your past as a blacksmith. That's like going, right. I can imagine what they're going, maybe you can shoe a horse for us. Just want to see him do it. Is that done? So you're going to hire him on that basis? Yes. Let's go. So
exactly.
So like this is the thing. You're like doing the law thing in like let's just say a very interesting period of time. Definitely for New York City, like
Hmm.
late 90s going
Hmm.
into the early 2000s. Now
Hmm.
because yes, .com that went pop. And
Yeah.
yeah. Were you around during like the September of 2001?
I was living in New York. However, I wasn't there when it happened. I was on vacation with my then girlfriend, and who would, well, now my ex-wife, but in Utah. We were at Zion National Park, and because I was 3 weeks away from leaving the US to fly to Tokyo, Japan, I had months before secured a possibility. Again, to your point of like what's where my nose follows. I chose. Oh, I asked to go to a foreign office, and originally the human resources department said no, we won't allow you to go because you don't know foreign language, and you don't have enough experience. And I said, okay, well that's what I want to do. And months later they called and said, hey, do you want to go to Tokyo, because we need somebody junior who doesn't need to speak the language who can work there. And I said,
Yeah.
sure, great. So that was done in June of 2001. And so I was set to leave New York the end of September. And that's what I did. I got on a plane 3 weeks after 9/11 and flew to Tokyo, Japan. And I have not lived in the US since.
My God, like you are like do you remember a TV show called The Littlest Hobo?
No, but I like it.
Like basically it was a TV show about this dog which just like went on its adventures just in the mid like in America. Just like it'll go along, it'll like help a random stranger out. But I don't know, like I had some great life coaching skills and like get their lives sorted. And then once his job was done, he went down the road. And
That's
like
kind
yeah,
of what, yeah, it's kind of what I do.
yeah,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you've got the wandering man genes. Like because like if you like on yeah, you know what, I haven't been back to the States since then. Wow. It's like
I mean, I've been back to visit, but I haven't lived there. Yeah, I lived in Tokyo. I lived here in London. I lived in France. I came back to London, and now I just travel around. So,
ah,
I mean, I'll give you. So, the place I own here. I mean, now I'm really homeless because the place I own here,
yeah.
which I renovated all of last year, all through COVID. I renovated my apartment, spent a ton of money, spent a lot more time and money that I ever knew I had.
Yeah.
And it just got flooded out last year. Sorry, last a week ago today,
Oh
completely
no.
flooded. It's completely destroyed. It has to be completely renovated. So I'm homeless. So I'm now back on the road.
Oh my Lord. Like,
Yeah.
what part of London do you live in? I have to ask because like London, like this year, it has been it has been the year of rain and then more rain. And just when you think there hasn't been enough rain, a little bit more rain. Just like
So I was away for most of that. I haven't been in London really since mid-June.
okay.
But my place is very central in Bloomsbury.
Uh,
Yeah, so near Euston, Russell Square, for I don't know, central London.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know it well. I have staggered through those streets many
many
times.
many
Many.
people stag
Yeah.
many people stagger through those streets.
Yes, like going, yes, sometimes with the homing beacon of a carrier pigeon, like just to get me home. And sometimes, hey, I can't go into too much detail because, yes, I'm sure my mother sometimes listens to this podcast. And I hate to be that one. But yeah, nah, but yes, got to say it. No, so this is the thing. You apart from doing all of this bouncing around and like being a lawyer in a like foreign country and everything like this, now what put you on the path, your true path of today?
Well, I think all of that did.
What? Yeah, but I hear you. But it's like, was there one sort of epiphanal moment where it was like, you know what, I'm done with this life of a lawyer. You know what, I'm done with this like corporate thing. You know what, I need to do something authentic, true to myself.
Yes and no. I don't know if there was like one epiphany moment.
Mm.
I mean, I've sort of stumbled through a bunch of different things, and there were definitely some low and very challenging times. When I I worked as a corporate lawyer for 5 years. So I worked in New York, Tokyo, and then here in London.
Mm.
And after, well, certainly my fifth year, I realized that I wasn't particularly happy doing what I was doing and that I wanted to leave. So I said, my ex-girlfriend, and then who became my wife, was a woman who I met in New York. We lived in Tokyo, and then when I moved here to London, she's French, and she moved to the south of France. So we started talking about starting our own life up together, and
Mm-hmm.
France seemed nice, and we thought we could make it really work there. So I decided after 5 years to leave corporate law. It just wasn't, it was good pay, but it wasn't, as you say, it wasn't authentic. So I left. And I lived in the south of France for nearly 2 years. The marriage quickly came to its conclusion.
I like the way you went. It quickly came to the end.
Yes,
conclusion.
Yes.
Not relive that.
Yes, and so all of a sudden I was in the south of France without really the job or career, and I was stumbling a bit, and obviously then our relationship was over. So I kind of had to look and see what else was around, and I had a lot of options. I thought, well, do I go back to London? Do I stay here in France? Do I move back to the US? If so, where do I go? Do I go to New York? All this. And as it would happen, Providence, grace, however you see it, a job pretty much landed in my lap, and a job that I had actually wanted 3 years earlier. I didn't even understand it, but there was a friend of a friend who worked for an Irish company, and he told me, I went to go see him in Dublin with my really good friend, who was our mutual friend, and this guy Chris Hill said that he was developing, and this is 2004, probably when we first met up. Actually, we'd met years before, but and he was working in offshore wind. So he was developing offshore wind farms. So I mean, even today, offshore wind farms are pretty obscure because people are aware of wind turbines and wind farms, and they maybe hear about them or see them on hillsides and whatever. But offshore wind farms are wind farms that are out at sea, and there's a number of reasons why they're put out there. But they wind's better, they produce more energy, all sorts of things. Anyway, when I heard about it, I thought, that's one of the coolest things I've ever heard of. How do I get involved? And my friend said, in 2004, he said, well, I don't know, keep in touch. We're always looking for new people. The industry is growing. At that point, there were probably less than a few hundred people working in the industry. Fast forward to early 2006, my ex and I were splitting up, and my friend called and said, "Hey, I'm really sorry you're doing so poorly, and it's breaking up, and not sure what you're going to do. I think Chris has a job in offshore wind." And sure enough, there was a job that, I mean, nobody had any. I mean, jobs descriptions would say, like the normal thing, it's like, well, you need 5 years experience in the industry, but the industry was less than 5 years old, so nobody had that. And the job required somebody, not required, but it definitely fit somebody with a legal background. So it was working on contracts and working with the government and doing all things. I mean, this is a £1.5 billion infrastructure project that would take 7 to 10 years to develop and build. And this was 3 years into the project, and they were expanding out. So I came back to London, got this amazing dream job working in offshore wind. I mean, we were just literally making up. It was, once again, being whatever you're traveling hobo, just coming in and figuring things out. And so I did that for about 5 years in various guises. I then moved into consulting. And at some point, I suppose in consulting, after a few years, it was a fine job, but it felt like I was just shuffling paper from one side of a desk to the other.
Yeah, no, this is the thing. The problem with consulting is like, okay, you go into a company or organization and like, yeah, you're kind of paid to be the bad guy in some
Mm,
respects. And if you're not fighting against one person or you're not going against another group, or there's someone who's like guarding all their little cookies they've got in that company as hard as possible, you're kind of not really doing the job properly, I'd say.
so I wasn't doing management consulting, that kind of thing. We
Yeah.
were consulting, we were advising companies who were looking to buy or
Oh,
manage or sell
yeah.
offshore wind farms. So we had expertise that could help them run or buy a particular project, and helping banks finance things. I mean, it had its interesting points. Anyway, after a while, I was just shuffling paper from one side to the other, and I
Yeah.
wanted to change. And I was doing my own personal development work, in intuition and creative consciousness or creative purpose. And I wanted an opportunity to do something else. Well, that opportunity occurred to me, maybe because I created it or called it in. I don't know. You can try to dissect it. Because even though the industry was growing like crazy,
Yeah.
my company had diminished from about 90% in staff over 5 years. And now, what is it, 4.5 years ago,
Hmm.
something like that, I was made redundant. My department was shut down. I was made redundant. And I all of a sudden had an opportunity to say, well, I didn't want to do that anyway. I wanted to run my own business and be an intuitive coach. So
Mm.
that's what I did.
Like, how do you become an intuitive coach?
Well, you just choose it. I mean, as I said, I was doing my own personal development. I had been working with my mentor, William Whitecloud, who he's written a few books, he's developed his own trainings. And I was seeing a lot of results in my own life, in terms of personal growth, and getting results that I wanted. And his model that he's synthesized is based on intuition, which he says he didn't create, he's synthesized. I mean, this type of, I mean, it's essentially getting to know yourself, right? And
Mm.
trusting your inner compass, that what's best for you. And and what was I going to say? He Yeah, I was getting results from that, and was coaching, and decided that that's what I wanted to do. Talk about like getting in line with my authentic truth.
Mm.
As I was working with that, I could just feel things opening up, as if like, this is what I want to be doing. And also, all the training I'd had as a lawyer, as a consultant, and I don't know about being a blacksmith, but potentially, led me to that. It was kind of, um, there's a guy, Robert Pressfield, no, sorry, Stephen Pressfield,
Mm-hmm.
who he's written many books. Wrote The Legend of Bagger Vance, that was made in the Hollywood movie with Will Smith and what's his name, Matt Damon, and blah blah blah.
Yep, the
Um,
golfing film.
yeah, exactly. And what he writes about, and actually what that movie is about, is very much in line, with what I do, with what William does. But Stephen Pressfield wrote an amazing book called The War of Art, which obviously is a take on Sun Tzu's famous book, The Art of War.
Yes.
But the War of Art, and he defines art broadly. There's art of painting, of writing a book, but there's also the art of cooking a meal, of raising a child, of whatever it is, right?
Mm.
And when you step into being an artist, however you define that, and as broadly as you define that, you face resistance. And primarily, if not almost exclusively, the resistance you face is inside of you. And so he talks about how to deal with that resistance. Yeah. That's one of the things that he talks about in one of his second books is people end up in what he calls shadow missions. So we have a mission in our lives.
Yeah.
We have a definitive higher purpose mission that we are here to fulfill. And most of us end up anywhere from 1 to 180 degrees away from that mission. And so therefore, if you imagine a sun shining down on you unless it's at high noon, you're going to cast a shadow, and you are going to be 1 to 180 degrees off. You're going to be in some shadow mission. So, as I said, the consulting, the lawyering, the skills I learned in that are very applicable to what I do now. Being objective, being able to listen, being able to take in and synthesize lots of information, not taking things personally, reflecting back truth to people. Those are skills that you learn as an attorney. But it wasn't fulfilling to me. When I recognized those and really was honest with myself, my heart, now I'm on purpose. Now I'm fulfilling my creative purpose and mission. And I love working with other people and supporting them to develop and be in their truth, develop their on point mission.
On point mission. I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah. Like, this is the thing. Like, I would imagine because of the jobs, the traveling around the world and everything like this, you sort of constantly sort of putting yourself in a place of discomfort in some regards, because like, okay, you could have happily stayed in New York, get in with that sort of vibe and just kept on carrying on. Being a lawyer, carried on. Like, could have been still being a blacksmith, started to have your own business and just carry on. But that sort of like moving, just keeps you unbalanced, and you get to get a better take on yourself. What would you say to someone who hasn't kind of done like that, putting themselves in that place of discomfort more so, to sort of get face to face with their authentic self? Be on point, be on mission, as you would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessary to do what I do, and nobody should be following the exact footsteps of somebody else, right? Each person has to decide for himself or herself what is, what that mission is. But I will agree that putting yourself at your limit, at your edge of what's known and what's unknown. We learn things by stepping into the unknown. We were saying before, right, that life isn't scripted. This podcast isn't scripted. And there is a tendency in all of us to want safety and security. And that's natural. That's a human thing, right? We want to know what roof is over our heads. We want to know how the meal's going to come on our table, all that stuff. But of course, none of that is actually truly certain. I mean, I just shared, I have a roof over my head that I spent a lot of money on. And a week ago, it completely flooded out. So where am I? Do I have the security of that? No, I assumed I did. I put a lot of money into it. But now I'm homeless for 6 to 8 months minimum, while the insurance deals with this and rips everything out and starts over again, right? So this illusion of safety and security is just that. And I think for many people, we want to extend that. We want to extend that illusion of security and actually believe that it is truly secure to all these other aspects. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think more and more, the world we live in is showing the cracks in those foundations, in those assumptions. I was sharing with somebody over the weekend. I was on another podcast, and some younger folk. And yeah, exactly.
It's like
back in my day.
He goes, back in my day, and
exactly.
You look at him like, oh, but you're 10. What the hell are you talking about? It wasn't like this back about 5 years ago.
Back when I was a kid. Yeah. But I was sharing. I said, if you look at I'm 51. If I look at my parents, and certainly my grandparents' generation, right? There were. You could find the equivalent here in the UK, but take your IBM, General Electric, right? These are these gold standard, nothing's ever going to change. Ford Motor Companies, right? I mean, back then it's just like you get a job with those companies and they're like, okay, cool, you are set, you have a job for the next 35, 40 years, whatever it is, and we're going to take care of you. You're going to get this much money and you're going to rise up and blah, 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 and you get this much vacation, and here's your security, and then here's your pension at the end, and here's your gold watch that we thank you for your service, and then you can go to Florida or go on your cruises and whatever you want to do, right? And people are like, cool, handshake, I'll take that contract, right? Also because people didn't realize that maybe they could do other things. Well, that's gone. I mean, that left the building 30 plus years ago, right? Because those companies, they're like, well, we're going to merge with this company, we're going to hack this workforce, and so all that all that assumed security is gone. So I think as people were on the receiving end of that, people started saying, well, why would I give my life to a Ford or an IBM or whomever if there's no loyalty? And so I think we're in this place now where people realize that we still kind of look for some sense of security, but it's really not there, right? And certainly the last 18 months has shown us, well, ain't nothing certain.
No, like, you know what, like, this is the thing. Yes, a small bit of pathogen can like wreck the world in like no time at all.
Yeah. Well, and everything that goes along with it, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not just the pathogen, right? It's like, how do we live our lives, and how do we create a society, right, that actually keeps us sane and functioning? And so, I mean, I guess that's all to say, right? Like for me, the assumption that things are certain is not actually necessarily true. So I have appreciated and I've been in positions, and I do put myself in positions to test some of that certainty, not for the sake of daredeviling, I don't think, but because it's kind of what I'm drawn to do. And I think the things that I was in before, I don't know what my makeup is, but I remember being a lawyer and making a lot more money than I make today, and not being happy, and looking around and thinking, is this what I want to do for the next 40 years? Like, I'm going to be an alcoholic. I'm going to be miserable, like just clicking through TV shows and getting fat, and maybe having a wife that I don't really appreciate because I'm miserable in myself and mad at my kids. And I just thought, I don't want any of this. Like, that's just me, right? I can only speak for me. And so I had this desire, urge to test that. Now, I definitely, fell flat many times, when I presented some really good stories, but the transition from blacksmith to lawyer was a hardship in and of itself. I mean, putting out 125 letters and getting 122 no's or just no responses is tough, right? The transition from lawyering to renewable energy to I didn't say much, but the breakup of the marriage was devastating for me. But that's cool, right? It's like Nietzsche famously said, that which does not kill me makes me stronger. And we're in this, like, I don't know what this life is, but we're in this opportunity. Like, what is it to be alive, right? I mean, is it to be at a desk and be doing the same thing and then wedge out some time here or there? Is it to actually follow through into your heart, into a path that's unknown and uncertain, but that may actually, when you follow it, give you riches and a sense of yourself and fulfillment far greater than any paycheck could ever provide?
Yeah, no, it's more of that life. Like, okay, this is the thing. We live in one of the best times of all times for the human race. 2020, all of that, even right now, look, if you went back 30 years like this, if the pandemic happened, it's like, can you imagine just like, you'll just simply go mad on 4 TV channels and like going, okay, OVCRs and whatnot, what is going on? but you have all the options in the world to watch anything you want, learn anything you want, everything like this. One of the things I think a lot of people fall in the trap of, because the whole 9 to 5, like sort of rhythm, the sort of like comfort and like the sort of like life of like going, yeah, I've done my day at work, I've come back home, I'm now with my family, I might watch a little bit of TV, might, like, if you got kids, help the kids like study, and then yeah, go to sleep the next day. Life is about little challenges you have to take on bit by bit. Some of the challenges will be small, insignificant, and it'll just be like, yeah, you are just sort of going on that daily grind. And some of those challenges will be like epic, like a real struggle, painful at times as well. I think the times when we sort of get like fall into the doldrums and we don't like really like lose it with life, or we get detached from life, is when we don't actually like seek out some of these challenges, and just basically sit back and get like the senses get dull and the reflexes are not as good as they were, and you don't kind of appreciate the next day or the day after and the day, like every single day, which should be a gift, because when you're here, you're here. When you're gone, you are gone, and there is nothing you can do about it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting. Like I look back on, my 20s. I mean, I was a pretty miserable person for a long time. I
No,
really
no,
was.
like, you know, I can't believe that, because we both head dropped before we started this podcast.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course, of course. But I think I've come to that appreciation
Mm,
of what the preciousness of this life.
mm,
And I've lost people a long way. I was talking to a very good family friend on the weekend on my podcast, a man who's 87, and like, God, he still just has this like fire,
mm,
like in his eyes, and like the things he's done are really, really amazing. And he was one of my father's mentors. My father died very, very young. He was 53, and it was very sudden. But it was like 20 years ago. And I think, like, I remember being, because I wasn't on purpose, and I had this desire. I didn't know. I didn't have the instruction.
mm.
I didn't walk through the right doors. I was bumping up against walls. I was tripping over myself to be miserable sometimes, and doing a pretty good job at it. And it, like, I got sick of hangovers and hitting my like head against the wall, metaphorically and physically. I got sick of that, being frustrated and choosing, okay, well, what's my responsibility, and what can I do in this? And
Mm.
I tried different things. I tried different, I suppose, therapies, drugs, legal and otherwise. I tried different retreats, yogas, meditations, different things, and I'm grateful. Like, I've a lot. I really appreciate all of it. And when I came to the work I do now 6 years ago or whatever, uh, it stuck. I was doing different things, and this work, the community, the people I was doing, and the results I was getting, and my ability to see my responsibility, and my agency, my capacity to create what I want in my
Mm.
life, personally, professionally. And it's not like just been a straight line up, right? There have been significant, I mean, like I shared, right? I mean, my place, I was in Vienna with my girlfriend last week, and I got a message that said, my apartment had been completely flooded out. So there's a part of me that was furious and thinking, like, God, I just spent a year, literally 11 months, renovating this place to a very high spec, and spending a lot of time, money, effort at project manage the whole thing. So there's a part of me that is like, wants to go to victim, right, and say, oh, woe is me, and let me post on social media and get everybody to say how sorry they are for me. And I just thought, yeah, okay, well, I mean, what's that about? What's that about? Like, what's why don't I see how I can actually, in myself, first of all, take responsibility and decide what I want to do with this, and what's the opportunity or the blessing, right? What's the lesson? What's the, assume that this is here to serve me rather than that this is here to take me down and prove how insubstantial and I am. Yeah, let's just assume that this is here for my learning, as a blessing for me.
Yeah, no, but like this is the thing. So many people, okay, look, don't get me wrong. There's bad things what happen to people like every day. And look,
Sure.
there are many a situation and circumstance which like if someone went like, yeah, I'm the victim in this like situation, I'm like, you go, yeah, you damn right. I saw what's happened. Oh my God, no. But there are other times where, okay, bad things happen, but honestly, it's not the worst thing. And honestly, it's you kind of go, yeah, if you really weighed it up on the whole grand scheme of things, it's not that bad.
Mm. Mm.
Like resolve that issue and move forward. And like this is the thing, like when you say take responsibility, I think many people, maybe it's today's society in some regards that, yeah, not a lot of people want to take that responsibility. Now, and many a person wants to play the game of woe is me. And look, I hold up my hands. I've played that game. It's like, woe is me. Isn't life so hard? And like, I can't look and I turn and I look at someone who's like out on the streets, like with their dog next to them, like missing a leg maybe, and go, woe is me. And they look at me like, are you crazy? Like, are you insane? Like, your life is not that bad from where I sit. And you got to hold that perspective. You got to get hold of it because you can drift into a silly realm, as I see it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
no. So with this, and I imagine, like, yeah, with the people you've been helping, like, what have been some of the things they've come to you with, like, helping them try to find, yeah, like, you know what I mean? What have they been coming to you?
Well, I mean, everybody's on their own journey. And I'm not a miracle maker. I'm not a therapist. I I help people to identify, you were talking about purpose and vision. So I help people identify what their visions are, what the vision is for their career, for their family, for their home, their artistic expression, whatever it is, who they want to be in themselves. Now, as I say, I do that through intuitive processes. So intuition, there's different definitions and understandings of intuition, but I believe that intuition is, it's our inner tuition. It's our inner knowing. It's our inner knowledge, right? It's our inner compass, right? That guides us without needing to know, and we all have that. We just haven't developed that. When the first time you go to a gym, right? And it's like, you haven't worked on a particular thing and you say, okay, I want to bench press 400 pounds. And the guy's like, whoa. That's cool. Let's start with 10. Let's get the form right. Let's start with this and we'll work our way up to that. Right. So similarly, I work with intuition, and there's some initial meditations and practices that we start to get a sense. And, I'm just in supporting my mentors. He's got a free online 5-week program that, a number of us support in. There's, I don't know, a few thousand people around the world doing it. And people come and we do intuition readings, and people are doing intuition readings, which are giving like intuitive insight and understanding about somebody that you've never met before. And somebody may be in London and another person may be in South Africa, or somebody's in Miami and another person's in Kenya. And people are on Zoom and giving readings, like insight into what somebody's gifts, talents, and abilities are, what their weakness or what their limitations are, what their fundamental limiting beliefs are. And they're getting accurate information, and people are saying, I don't understand. I mean, it seems psychic, but it's intuition. Intuition is what the mind apprehends before rational thought kicks in. We're so used to rationalizing and saying, oh, I couldn't possibly do that. I don't have enough money. I don't know the right people. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm too thin. I'm too fat. All the excuses we give. But on some level, I believe we're connected to everything through all time and space. Yeah. Not to get too woo-woo, but like we're all energy. We're all energy. We're all vibration. So we are connected, right? So on some level, we can connect to that. And there are tools and techniques you can learn, relatively simple, that connect you to that. Now, is it going to be flawless and get you to the moon on the first day? Well, maybe not. Maybe it's, like I say, it's something you need to practice a little bit. I'm much better intuitive coach today than I was 2 years ago or 4 years ago, right, when I started, because I'm in that practice and I'm learning, right? I'm constantly putting myself in that. So I help people identify the visions of what they want. Yeah. And as I say, there's a practice, I take people into meditation. We go to a place, it's kind of like a place outside of ego. It's an imaginative place where somebody sees everything that they want and it already exists, right? Like, this is the life I want. This is the partner I want. This is the home I want. And you see it. And I go and I see pretty much the same thing. We share with each other and we share and we say, well, this is what I got. And the person says, well, that's amazing. That's what I got. Right. And so from that, I then help people, identify a set of choices, right? You got to put things in. It's not just some etheric, like, well, let me be happy, right? It's like, well, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What is the flavor of that house, right? Or the relationship. And it's not just sort of like wishing it and sitting under a tree and hoping it, like, oh, if I just sit here and hope and pray and put enough mental energy, then £1 million is going to be in my bank. Well, good luck to you. I haven't seen anybody who's done that yet.
Feels like a secret to me.
Yeah. Well, let me let you in on a little secret. That's only half the truth. That is only half the truth. Because see, people that do that, right? And I've been subject to this. People are focused on the wrong thing. They say to themselves, well, I don't want to be poor, right? So I must want to be rich. Yeah. So I say that that's a negative vision because you're just trying to get away from what you don't want. Yeah. Now, there's no real difference. It's on the same level. It's on the same vibration. Wanting to, be feeling poor and wanting to be rich, it's the same thing. It's like the same, like, where on a thermometer does hot stop and cold start?
Good question. It's like, yeah.
It doesn't, right? It's like, but what's comfortable? Comfortable is something above that I'm comfortable. Well, is it 20 degrees? Is it 15? Is it 37? Right?
All of this is subjective.
You're outside of that paradigm, right? People that say, like, they're people that say affirmations. They look in the mirror and they say, I am rich, I am rich, I am rich. What do they really believe about themselves?
Yeah. Well, like, this is the thing, like, when anyone who, like, okay, vision, like I said, vision and purpose earlier in the podcast, and like, look, I believe if you've got like a vision and a purpose, you will put yourself in the right direction. Like, you've got a direction you can head in, but you still need to have a plan. You still need to have some type of like cause and effect. What is that action you're going to take? Because look, as you said earlier, with a number of people, like, coming in and day out, like, with their excuses, the amount of times people come up with an excuse not to do something, but seldomly do that thing, one thing to take action. If it's to write a book, just like do the first sentence. And then basically, once you've done that sentence, do a paragraph. Once you've done, do another paragraph, you've got a page. And then the next, like, then you move on to the next page, another sentence. But a lot of people, they get caught up in the excuses. It's like, yeah, as you say, they don't have the time. Oh, yeah, I'm too old. Oh, yeah, I'm too young. Oh, yeah, I don't have the money. Oh, yeah. But rather than sort of looking and concentrating and focusing on what is the one action I need to do today to make that move, to start that momentum and build it from there, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And what I would say, I mean, it's in line with the way that I coach people and how I, run my own life.
Mm.
So there's a structure. Creating, even if it sounds a little unsexy, has a structure to it.
Yeah.
Creating is structural. And, there's one thing to have a vision, but you need to know where you are in relation to that vision. Because then there's a relationship between 2 points, where you want to be and where you are. And when I say where you are, I don't just mean like, oh, I'm here in London, I don't have money and da da da. I mean, like, where are you really in yourself? Like, oh, well, I don't believe I can do this, or I don't believe I deserve to have what I want. So when I work with people, this, as I say, goes back to, my I think it's helpful to have the legal training I have, because I don't get involved in people's stories. And I actually don't, I'm interested in truth. So where are you really? Where are you really in yourself, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it is, financially, all that's relevant? Because, Carl Jung said, which I love, Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Yeah. So one of the things I do is, in that current reality, what the truth of where you are in relation to your vision, I make the unconscious conscious. So we and you can do this in intuitive practices. Yeah. You call out, well, actually, I'm focused on, what I'm really focused on is believing that I'm not good enough, or believing that it's going to be a waste of time. Well, once you name that and bring it out into the open, bring light to it, it ceases to have the same power over you, because then you're aware of it. Well, this is why I'm doing this, because I believe this. But just because you believe something about yourself doesn't make it true, unless you choose that's your truth. Yeah. So when you have those two, then you're right. Then you can start to say, okay, cool, this is where I want to be, and this is where I am, where I really truly am. Because some people, like, we don't want to admit the thing. It's like, well, that's a weakness, and da, da, da. Well, it's a weakness if it's not allowing you to move forward and you're not owning it. We're all human beings. We're all flawed is an awkward word, but we're all, in that sense, like, we're not perfect, right? We make mistakes, which is just, mistake is not like a failure. It's just, it's like when you say, like, take one, right? And then it's like, oh, they got the word wrong. Okay, take two, right? It's a mistake, right? You get to take it over, right? So when you see those two things, the vision and where you are, then you say, cool. So what is going to move me forward from where I am to where I want to be? And now I do that intuitively. So, sometimes we're working on something, and somebody's got a big project, got a big meeting or a big project, and the logical thing may be like, man, I got to sit down and spend 10 hours like putting a PowerPoint or this plan together. And when we see it intuitively, it may be like, well, go for a walk. And then people are like, yeah, but I can't do that. It's like, yeah, but that's what your intuition told you. And when people, when I do this, when my clients do this, when we get something intuitively, an action, a step, an insight to take, and they follow through with it, that's when the magic happens. Because what will happen, you'll get something like that. You'll get, well, just go for a walk, and the person will go for a walk, and they'll meet the person who's going to out on the walk, that's going to support them, that actually is the person you needed to provide the office manager, or to provide this other thing. But if they just sat at home doing the work that they think they should do, that they think is going to get them where they want to go, but they don't actually follow their inner compass, they don't follow their intuition, they're just going to be frustrated. And when you follow your intuition, when you take action, inspired, intuitive action, I don't know how, I don't know why, but magic follows. And that's that's the realm I work in.
Mm. Ah, a magician, a sorcerer, as you will.
An alchemist, yeah.
An alchemist.
We turn lead into gold. All that unconscious stuff. That's what alchemy was. Alchemy
Indeed was.
was only spiritual alchemy. The idea, and it goes back to the Egyptians, if not the Atlanteans, as we were talking before. But it goes back to at least the Egyptians. This idea of Renaissance alchemy, of like literally turning lead into gold, was a front. It was a cover. It was a cover because if you said, hey, the cardinal and the pope come by and say, hey, what are you guys doing? If you said, well, we're teaching people to be creators and to be masters of their own lives, well, you'd have oil poured down your throat and ripped by 4 horses and tarred and feathered and have your head chopped off. You couldn't do that. That's heresy. So what do you, nothing. We're just turning rocks into gold. Going to make you really rich. Oh, okay. Carry on. Yeah. Keep doing what you're doing. That's cool.
It's like, wait, isn't that witchcraft by another name? No.
But if it's making the church and other people rich, it's okay. But hey, I mean, that's medieval church anyway. I don't want to disparage religion. It's just to say, there's an opportunity to look at all these arcane, dense books and texts and tomes on alchemy and see that they're not literally, or they're not exclusively talking about taking the physical material of lead and turning it into the physical material of gold, but they're talking about spiritual, metaphoric, that the lead, the lead of our lives, the things that make us human, our failings, our beliefs, all the things that are there, when we actually bring those out and we transmute them, we can turn them into figurative gold, which is our life's purpose and our heart's desire.
Yeah, interesting. I am curious, like, over the sort of 6 years you've been doing this now, would you say over that course of time, more people are like now looking to turn their figurative lead into gold?
Yeah.
Has there been a marked increase?
Yeah, I mean, either there has been, as truly, and that's a factual occurrence, or I'm just operating in a realm where I'm coming across more of those people. So my antenna is open more to that. I do think, and maybe it's both, right? Because as I said, I mean, I've traveled in lots of different sort of esoteric circles and done lots of different practices and meditation, all sort of yoga and other other practices. And 10 years ago, if I talked, if we were having a discussion about mindfulness and awareness and consciousness, people would be like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And I can have, everybody has their own understanding of things, and that's cool, but I do think that there's much more awareness about the ability of consciousness and the ability to create one's life. And there's been a huge surge in life coaches and all this kind of personal development and empowerment, and it's you gotta take everything with a grain of salt. Like, don't assume that what I say is true. Like, go test it, go test it for yourself, or do research, listen to people. Like, somebody has to listen to me and decide, well, this person either sounds credible or they sound like a nut job. Like, that's cool. Let me be clear. Like, I'm not for everybody. I recognize, and not only there are people that want personal development, and I have stopped working with people, and people have stopped working with me because we realize that we're not on the same page. I'm interested in working with high level creators, or people who want to be high level creators, and I can help them do that, right? And I not that I guarantee results, but I work with people because I know in myself that I can help them create beyond their expectations. But I also hold people to their truth. I have a high standard, but I hold people to their truth. And when I work with people and recognize what they're capable of, I hold them to it, because on some level, we want that, like, let me just take today off. Let me just I'll just wait to win the lottery and I'll just sit and watch Netflix until then. Well, I'm not interested in working with those people. But I am interested in helping, it's like, that's why I facilitate creative purpose. Everybody has creative purpose, and I make that easier for people.
Yeah, no, the friend basically goes, hey, yeah, you want to sit down, watch this film, eat this pizza? Okay, don't worry, go with it. Yeah, go with it. People often hate the other friend, which is like, hey, no, come on. It's go time. It's like, no. Because there's that element of truth of like, you're like, yeah, I know I have to get this going. I know I have to do this, but can I just sit down a little bit long? Nope. Time to go. Off you go. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really, I take your point. I don't necessarily I'm not interested in people working nonstop and working themselves to the bone. Right. I work strategically, rather than, it's like work smart, not hard. Cause I've worked hard. I mean, I've worked jobs. I mean, when I was a lawyer, I was working 60, 80 hours a week, right? We were doing all nighters. We were working till 3 a.m. I did that. I can do that. I'm not interested in doing that. If somebody else wants to do that, that's cool. They can do that. I don't actually think you need to, because, and also like when I work hard, call it now, when I work a lot, I do work a lot. But I enjoy it. And so, sometimes, I run my own business. I have my own time. And I can take time off and then work till midnight, or, there's flexibility, but, I don't think it's necessarily a sense of what I have to do and must. And, I grew up with should was probably the most prevalent word that came out of my mother's mouth. Love her to death. But should, Taylor, you should do this. You should do this. You should. And I got really, really sick of it. So when I hear myself or somebody else say, I must, I have to, I should, it sets off alarm bells, because I get this oh, is that a choice? Are you choosing from the depth of who you are to do that? If you are, cool. Then say you choose it, because must has this have to, has this obligation burden of I must go on. I have to do this because, it's like, do you want to? Do you choose it?
Yeah, no, I think it's for myself, it'll be more this is the reason why I'm doing this. And that why basically every action I take is facilitating that why come to being. And I think with a lot of with people, you can have strong whys and you can have fuzzy whys. And if you've got a fuzzy why, that's the why where you've got to literally drag it. You've got to be motivated to drag it through the mud and everything like this, drag it up hills, drag it down. And then, you come to a point where I'm sick of dragging this damn why around. When you've got a strong why, it's like gravity. It where it moves, it drags you. You don't have a choice in the matter. It might be a case of you might do a 70-hour week. You might do a 4-hour week, a 4-hour each day or something like this. Work when the kids go to bed, work in your spare time. But that strong why is the thing which is okay, I have no choice but to go with it, because it is now gravity. I orbit this why, and fuzzy whys, not so much.
Like that fuzzy why. So it sounds like a character, like a cartoon character. This is fuzzy why and strong why.
So what are you gonna do with fuzzy why? Oh no. Strong why.
I see this fuzzy why and this furry kind of sort of kind of blurry character kind of walking through, and then there's this really crisp, clear hello, I'm strong why.
Yes. This is what we're gonna do today.
I think we have a cartoon that we can develop there. Strong why and fuzzy why. The whys of your life, or the whys of
your life. Oh, the whys of life. No.
Yeah. The whys of life. Yeah. I like it. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. But that's how I see as an aspect of that, because hey, I think so many people are like, okay, yeah, I I don't get it, but it's like,
Mm,
right, but it's not difficult. But I'd say, yeah, know what your why is, and then that
mm.
sort of galvanizes what you want to do with regards to that.
I think the why goes back to purpose, right? So
Mm.
when you're starting to identify your purpose, when you're creating your purpose,
Yeah.
that unfolds, right? It develops, right? And I don't necessarily know. Maybe you're different. Certainly for me, I mean, I talked about like meandering around a lot. So my why is it's unfolding, and I'm getting closer to it, and I'm closer in the creation of that, at each and every moment. I mean, there are certain clients of mine, who they know their why, but they're very disconnected. They don't feel that they can. They don't feel that they don't have permission to do that.
Mm.
I've got a client. She's an artist right now. Talk about shadow. She's a painter. She's a brilliant painter,
Oh.
and she's wanted to be. She's, I don't know, 60 something. She's wanted to be a professional painter her whole adult life, and she never felt like she had the opportunity and that. And so she does house painting. Yeah. And there were things that she looked at and like, well, I've maybe tried to do this, maybe try this other thing. But really, I'm like, why are you looking at, fine, you want to make money to paint houses. That's cool, right? Because we all need, not just
Mm.
like wave a magic wand and money shows up. That's cool, right? But looking at these other things, like people can go down, rabbit holes of thinking like, well, I got to go get this degree so I can earn this amount of money. Then I can afford this studio. Then I can do this. And then in 3 to 10 years time, then I can finally be the painter or the author or the whatever it is that I always wanted to be.
Yeah.
And if that's what it takes, cool. But if that's your plan to get there, that's a faulty plan, because that's why I help people with vision. I'm like, when people tell me what they do in their lives, I'm like, cool. How does that relate to your vision? How does that relate to the specific choice? And if they can't answer me, then I say, what? Then just, stop.
Mm.
Do like, unless you're taking inspired, intuitive action that is in line with your vision and what you want to create, I'm not. You're off mission. You're off point.
Yeah. No, I
You're
think
in a very fuzzy, very fuzzy why.
yeah, absolutely. But like this is the whole thing. When like people are using that, it's the realm of like they're just using procrastination to like basically stop like facing that sort of scary like step into the unknown. And when like procrastination, what it often does, it's just procrastination to me, it's just a true killer of any sort of dream you may have. Because like, hey, when you're younger, time seems to be like an eternity, ever extending out a day, a week, a month, Lord knows a year. You're like, oh my God, a year. As time goes by, you get older. A day, a week. Look, I feel like I've blinked twice, and payday's like coming on a monthly basis. It's like, yeah. And this year, we're currently in October. November's just around the corner. December, boom.
Boom.
Bye 2021. Welcome
Yeah.
2022. And
Yeah.
yeah, if we let that sort of like procrastination, like sort of rob us of that time where we could be making some real big progress, like making it like have that one random chance meeting, like with someone who might be able to go, hey, I can help you with that. And it doesn't mean like it has to be a capital outlay. It could be just like, oh, yeah, just do this technique here, do that technique there. Come on now. If anything, out of the two of us, like you definitely have benefited from that type of scenario. Like just from carrying a dragon to being like, hey, a quality welder, let's just say.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I follow threads. I mean, I suppose I've been good at that. At not only like, I'm open to other opportunities. So, I can't remember what you said, but something came to me earlier that, comes back to me now is, maybe you said like, how do people develop that sense of adventure? And, you don't need to go lift 18-foot dragons. You don't need to take a job that's halfway around the world. You don't need to, as I say, don't follow my footsteps, create your own. But I do think that the one thing I'm very happy to have, and I think I even had it even through all my misery, is curiosity. So there's a sense that I don't know, and I'm interested to see what else is out there, to see what explore what I don't know, intellectually, physically, psychologically, sexually, emotionally, spiritually, like all these different ways, not to like push myself to go places that I'm not comfortable with necessarily, but because just to be curious, like, what is it, so when I wake up in the day, I mean, sometimes I have very specific plans, and sometimes I'm like, cool, I'm curious to see what happens, when I come on a show, right? I don't know. I mean, we develop a conversation, and I'm curious to what's going to unfold and be with that experience.
No, I hear you. And like, hey, hopefully this has been like a very rewarding experience for you so far,
Absolutely. So far,
So far,
we'll see
I'm not
what
going to
happens.
say it. It's like, moments after I said that, it went horribly wrong.
Exactly.
It took a dark turn.
It may. Anyway, that's not what I choose.
What I choose is I just like, oh my God. Then he told me a story. I was like, what happened then? I got a little bit gray, a little bit fast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like I am curious. Now, this is the thing, like talking about being curious and like, yes, like learning a little bit more about other things going on. What was the sort of like inspiration behind you starting up your own podcast?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good sort of thread, because I didn't really know that I wanted to. I felt like, part of one of the things I had as a vision, as a choice, was to be in my own expression. Now, I'm a writer. I do some writing and publish some things, blogs, but kind of held back on a lot of long form fiction in terms of publishing, and but I had this sense of really developing and pursuing or exploring my expression, and it felt there was this something like almost like tickling in my throat, as if it wasn't just writing and putting words down on page, but that it was something in voice. Yeah. And so I started to explore what that might be. Now, I was fearful to come out and really be in my the fullness, the fullness of exposure and vulnerability of being out there and speaking whatever truth it was, because it was like, whoa, if I go out there and speak who I am, well, people are going to come out with pitchforks and slay me, and God knows what. Like, who am I to do this, right? So back to this kind of shadow mission, I had an interest and said, "Wow, you know what I'm going to do?" Because I'm interested in voice, and I used to talk about back in the day when I was at university. I had a radio show at
nice.
Local universities in the U.S. It's college radio is kind of quite common. So you have a much smaller sort of radius of that the antenna spreads out. It's not like these big commercial shows or radio stations that go for tens of miles or however far. So you may only have like a 5-mile catchment or something, but it covers the university, and you give people who are students an opportunity. So I had a weekly radio show, and obviously speak some, but mainly I was just playing music. And so I did have an interest in doing this. Like I started exploring, like I'm doing my own workshops. I started doing like some improv, classes, and I used to do some theater. So I kind of had some interest in it. And I don't know, 2 years ago, I said, something came to me and I said, you know what? I think I'm going to try voiceover, because I thought, well, I'm living in the UK. I know I've got an American accent. It's not super distinct. Like I don't have a twang. It's really harsh. I can put it on.
While you're doing that, I've been watching episodes of Ted Lasso. So
Exactly
going on. So I'm like, okay.
And people have said like, oh, you've got a good voice, relatively deep. And, so I was like, okay, cool. Well, I'll explore that. So, I bought some equipment, I bought a microphone, figured out how to do editing and putting things together. And, similar to the 125, resumes I sent out for legal, I sent out, dozens, hundreds, let me do this, let me put this. And I got a few gigs. I did some voiceover for some book narration. I was much better at book narration than I was at, say, commercials, right? For whatever reason. Anyway, whatever. And I was doing it for a while, right? And it was cool, but in a bit like the corporate work, I realized that although it was interesting and to be kind of, fun speaking into a microphone and doing this and being involved in audio, I was kind of just doing other people's work. Like, here's somebody else's script, here's somebody else's book, and I'm just kind of being that voice. And so having done that and having nobody come to arrest me or put me into audio prison or whatever it was I feared was going to happen, I got this thing. I realized I started listening to podcasts, or I had been listening to podcasts, and thinking like, actually, I think what I really want to do is start a podcast. Now that started. My idea for the inkling started for it probably a year and a half ago, just about, yeah. And then I spent 9 months terrified of actually putting it together, and also trying to get it absolutely perfect, right? So that from the absolute beginning, it would be the most perfect and most listened to podcast in the history of podcasting. And everybody would say, yes, we have been waiting for this all our lives, and everybody else stop.
When you spoke, cherubs came down from heaven.
Exactly.
And blessed us all.
Exactly. So I put a lot of effort, and coming up with a theme and talking to people about coming on as guests and figuring out how to edit and doing the artwork and So, around this time, that'll be October. Yeah, around this time last year, I'd finally committed. And I then started recording episodes, editing episodes, had my big launch in January, waited for the seas to part and for the light from heaven to come down, and there was crickets. I mean, there were a few friends that were like, that's cool. Yeah. Nice. Well done. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Nice. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. And then I started to get into it, and I thought, well, I'm just going to do this, right? I mean, you're well ahead of me. I'm at about 50 episodes, and you're at 200. So, like, hats off to you. Like, it's like inspiration, right? And we're all just making it work. Yeah.
Yeah. Just keep the consistency. You'll get there. Like, hey, look, that's the way that's what I was like. Yeah. Started before the lockdown in September, 2019. I was like, yeah. And this is the thing. The way I started my podcast, it was like, yeah, just me, myself recording. It's like, yes, this is me already, blah, blah, blah. These are my mystical thoughts. Oh, 5 to 8 episodes of doing that. I was like, no, I'm sick of hearing my voice talking about mystical thoughts. And I was like, yeah, let me get out there and start talking to people. And let's just say the first ever podcast I did with a stranger, let's just say that didn't go well. It's like, no, you see how we're set up lovely with Zoom and everything like this. I did not know of Zoom at the time, and I was using Skype through OBS. And then basically, if you set it up and you're like, oh, it's working perfectly, then another computer comes into the mix. It might not work perfectly with that other computer. It didn't. I was like, oh my, after many words of swearing and everything like this, the gentleman who I was interviewing, name of Liam, he was like, yeah, no, I do podcasts as well. I'll take care of it. Don't worry. He recorded the podcast, then sent it to me.
What a service.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. Oh God, no. But let's just say it was not the best. And then I struggled with using still with Skype and OBS. Then when I discovered Zoom, I was like, no, not doing this OBS. I can't be doing it anymore. I discovered Zoom, and 2 weeks later, the rest of the world discovered Zoom. so much easier. So much easier.
Fantastic.
But yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I think, the similar, like, I started to find my groove and started to find what I was interested in and started to find my ability in it, and so what the episodes I'm producing and putting out now, I mean, I believe, I don't know, but they feel better. They feel like I'm more capable of the what we're doing on the back end and how we're promoting things. It's a learning process. And so that got me into it, and that's where I am now. And I also realized, like, I don't know where it goes. Like, I'm very, I'm still very curious and open. Do I want to be a podcaster for the rest of my life? I don't know. Maybe. I'm open to that, and I'm also open to see where else it might go. I mean, maybe I start a different podcast, or maybe I take this in a different direction. But I think even the way that I have learned to curate an episode, how I talk with people, who I'm having on as guests, it's developed. It's developed over time, and that's what I'm interested in, right? Is developing that, being open to something, like having a vision, but being open to that vision expanding or changing a little bit, right?
Yeah, like this is the thing, when with something like a podcast, like, yes, it can evolve and grow into something maybe quite unexpected. Like the sort of like when someone goes, oh yeah, a podcast has got to be half an hour. No, it doesn't. It could be several hours, or it could just be like 5 or 10 minutes. It's entirely up to you where it goes. And like, yeah, with the people you bring on, that's up to you where that goes. The people you meet, the people you talk to, it's totally up to you. And I think there are many people which still don't get it, if you get what I mean. Like, oh, why are you talking to these people? Like, if I put it from my own sort of thing, my personal thing, look, as time goes by, look, when you're young, everyone tells you, like, enjoy these moments when you're young and everything like this, because look, when the good times are gone, they're gone. You're like, what are you talking about? When I go out with my friends in my like late teens and my 20s, I go, okay, we are Legion. And off you go. You get up to your shenanigans, you get up to your good times, no problem. Get to your 30s, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, still go out. You're like, we are Legion. It's like, oh, okay. There's not as many people there as before, but yeah, we still go out, we have our good times, everything like this. And like when you get to your 40s, you go, we are Legion. Oh, well, no, we're not a Legion anymore. We're a small crack unit, which just and you're like, okay. Now, as each decade goes on, that sort of thing gets smaller and smaller, and you like the conversations you had, the opportunities to meet people when you were younger, now sort of fade away. And this is the whole when people go, you get set in your ways when you're older. No, the only reason why you get set in your ways is because you're now just talking to a smaller group of people. You're not having that sort of broad, like sort of experience, that broad exposure to new people, new ideas. And like, so it's like one of those things where you're like, okay, this podcast has been an excellent opportunity for me to go out there, meet and talk to people I never would talk to, never have the opportunity to talk to. Now, 190 plus people I've spoken to, like over a course of 2 years. And
amazing. It's awesome.
More the better for it.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, there is like, it's like we produce these to entertain, or for listeners out there. Obviously, it's not just us to record for ourselves, and yet there's something we get back for it, right? And as you say, so like I'm learning, I'm growing, and like I'm following my own curiosity. Like if I get to a point where I say, well, I'm not enjoying it, like being a lawyer, I would stop doing it. But right now I'm enjoying it more and more, and making connections, and sounds like you are too. So that's why we're still here.
Indeed. This is why I'm smiling. Like, yes, like, time goes quickly when you're having fun. I got to say, now I have to ask, like, this will be one of my penultimate question. But Now, where do you like? What sort of direction do you feel you're going to be going in over the next few years?
Wow. Well, more creative purpose. I mean, I really feel like I'm opening up to my own creative purpose. I'm very interested in working with individuals, but working with groups as well. So like, I want to go back into corporates and organizations to really merge and in a way almost heal like some of the work I did. I have a lot of sympathy for people who work in organizations, and I think that we have corporations and they do wonderful things. They make computers for us and cars and all these things, but there's a lot of systems in corporate organizations that limit the potential for people. And I think that's a real disservice to the organizations. I think that's a real disservice to the individuals involved in them. And I've been involved in small, medium, and very large organizations. And I know corporate speak. I know how that works. So I'm quite interested, and this is a stretch for me, to go back into the corporate world, but to bring intuition, to bring a more heart-focused way of doing things to people, and it feels challenging. But I'm very interested in doing that because I think it's an opportunity for where we are in the world today. We were talking about the kind of the breakdown of those traditional, big corporations, and they're all going to be they are dinosaurs, right? I don't know when the asteroid hits, but they're going away. So there's an opportunity to be involved in something that is going to benefit everyone, and that it's going to, bring in, like, I believe in synergy, that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So that when three people are involved, because I worked in organizations where we were all involved in something that was much bigger than us, and we leveraged beyond our individual capacity, or and much beyond a hierarchical capacity, where it's like, here's the person at the top, then the two people below him or her, and then the six people below him or her, them, or blah 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 blah, and that's all they do is in that kind of like thin wedge of what you're allowed to do. It's like, well, if you have capacities and can help, and it's like we have this opportunity to learn a very different way, a collaborative, synergistic way to create and run organizations. So that's one thing. And then my own artistic expression, right? I'm interested in writing, in podcasting, in a number of different things. I mean, I wrote a children's book last year that I'm still waiting to publish, which literally just fell out of the pages. I actually sat down to write something else and complain about something, and this children's story just spilled out of me.
Nice.
Yeah. So, I'm interested in exploring and, being in the fullness of my expression. And, like helping, like we all play our own part. So, I'm very interested in facilitating creative purpose. And, it sounds a bit sort of lofty, but like, or I don't know, maybe it sounds just arrogant or pretentious, but there's this opportunity around consciousness and global consciousness, and I don't know where that goes, but it goes to the synergistic sense. And I'm interested, like, I've done enough work to see what the value of being honest with oneself, to be humble with oneself. And if we started doing that individually and collectively, I feel that, maybe it's a belief, maybe it's a blind faith, or as I say, naive, but when we start to really open up to what's true and possible for us, I believe that we have the potential to create a better world. And I'm interested in being part of that. I don't have all the solutions, or even many of them, but I can help facilitate people and hold space for all of us, or some of us, to come together and start to work on this.
Yeah, no, but this is the thing. It's not like, well, like the whole thing is, it's never about having the whole plan or the whole sort of grand scheme to make the world a better place. It's just about, like, hey, making the difference in your small area of the world. And if you can inspire someone else to make their small difference in their part of the world, and again and again and again and again, hey, then that's when you make a real difference. It's not in the sort of grand. It's just like, yeah, being, like, as Gandhi says, be the change you want to be in the world. And that just means just taking responsibility for yourself, making it better. And then, yeah, your neighbor will go, okay, I'm benefiting from this. And the neighbor from there, and the neighbor from there, and the neighbor from there, and the community as a whole gets better from it. And yeah, taking it from there, simply.
Agree.
Yes. Now, I've got to say, Taylor, thank you for coming on to the podcast today. Look, yes, I could talk to you for a good chunk more. But I go, oh.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's been a real pleasure. We've had a great conversation, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on, to get to know you, and to create what I thought was a really fun and curious, explorative conversation.
There you go. There you go. I'm liking it. Can you tell the lovely people out there how they can find you? How they can find you on these interwebs?
Yeah, the interwebs, the grand interweb of whatever it is. So, I mean, I've got social media, the Taylor Roark on Instagram, and my website. So my company is Galliant Trainings. It's GALLIANT. The website is galliant.life. And my podcast, The Adventures of Self. That's its tagline on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, The Adventures of Self. That probably is, easy enough to find me.
There you go. There you go. Yes. As I say, Taylor, thank you for coming on today. I'll put all of the descriptions, all of it in our show notes. So yes, go out there, find him, subscribe, follow, do all the things which can help boost Taylor's profile here. But yes, and all I would like to say is to you, my friends, my life warriors, is yes, please stay safe, stay well, be awesome, be excellent, be fantastic, be all the positive bees you can be in this world, and then some, guys. Have a good day. Yes. Peace.
Peace.
Yep. And we are